Hey, ¿qué pasa, Calexico? Welcome back to the podcast. Before we start today, I want to thank our friends here at Calexico Brewing Company for allowing me to record today's episode here at their place. To me, it's a big hassle having to kick everybody out of my house to record a podcast. So I kind of I'm always looking for a place to be able to record and not have to kick my family out of the house for a couple of hours. And today's guest is a principal at a model high school here in Calexico. He's the voice of the Bulldogs. He's a former city council and mayor. And to me, he's like the unofficial mayor of Calexico. Today's guest is Mr. John Moreno. Thank you, John. Thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you, Jose. I appreciate you calling me and setting up this interview. And a big thanks to the Yepes family and the Calexico Brew Company that allowed us to use their wonderful place of business for this interview.
Yeah. Like I said, you're a man of many hats here in Calexico. Before you were, I guess, a mayor, principal, you were a teacher. You're an athletic director as well. But you're also a longtime resident of Calexico. And one of the things that I've noticed, every time we hang around somewhere that you show up, whether it's at Savo's house or somewhere else, somebody will bring a topic up about Calexico. And then you have like this really long, but really, you're a great storyteller and you sell Calexico well.
Thank you.
One of the times that it dawned on me like on how you, I guess, really love our city is recently we had a company come in at Calexico Unified that was trying to get us a new superintendent. And you were in the group before I was. And the guy's like, oh, yeah, we had the former mayor here. And he was telling us all these, really nice things about Calexico. Because the plan was for us to tell these group of people good things about Calexico. And to be honest, I was like, kind of like made me think like, what is it about Calexico that we love so much? And this guy said like, oh, you had a laundry list of things to say about Calexico. And I mean, now that you're not a city council member or mayor or whatever, I think it really dawned on me that, you really, really have a lot of pride in your city, even though, you have, you're a principal, but you don't have anything else to do with the city. You tell these amazing stories. Like right before we were recording, you were telling me how Encinas was, what was the name of that?
East Side Avenue.
Yeah. So, that's something that I guess admire that, even before that, you were telling me that your parents grew up here. You grew up here. Your parents got here like in the 20s. You graduated like in the
late 70s, 78.
70s. So like, you tell me that some of the stories, are because of your dad, but as well, you've also lived a lot of those experiences here in Calexico. So usually I tell my guests like, tell me a little bit about yourself, but I guess you can, tell us a lot about yourself and Calexico. So yeah. I guess start off wherever you want.
Well, thank you, Jose. A lot of the stories that I've heard, and a lot of the history that I appreciate listening to and looking at came from my dad. And he was born in Calexico in 1928, graduated Calexico High School 46. He was a tennis ace in those days. And then he went to join the service at the end of World War II. Went to Alaska, came back and started working in the grocery business. Back in those days, you had a couple of chain supermarkets. You had the A&P, which was the Walmart of its day, back in 40, 50 years ago. You had Safeway, and so he started working at a market, and he just stayed there. And he stayed there till he opened what we used to have, the Super Shopping, which was the Apple Market, in 1977. And it was a real family business, because all the family worked there.
Yeah.
All my four brothers and sisters, we all worked there, and each in their own different department. And one of the things that sticks in my mind the most is how to treat the customers, and how to have a positive outlook, and how to, care about your job. And so during the 60s, he became a store manager for the A&P. And he also had businesses aside from the supermarket. My dad was in partnership with my uncle, Ruben Carrillo, who had, he just passed away, who had a restaurant, which used to be next to the Fox Theater called Bud's Cafe. And so my dad had that along with my uncle, and my mother worked there. And this is in the 60s. So I was just a kid, I was 4, 5, 6 years old. At the same time, a block over, he was the owner of a pool hall where they would serve beer and sandwiches, and you could shoot pool and shuffleboard, and it was, the jukebox. It was where the Elks building used to be. And then right next door, he had a laundromat where people would take their clothes. And so he had all these businesses aside from his job, aside from the 5 kids. And he was always working.
Yeah.
He was always working, and that's what he taught us. He led by example. His days started at 7 in the morning and they finished at 7 at night. He's old school, and he just he taught us, and my mother did too. But my mother was different. She taught us. We have this business, but don't depend on it.
Yeah.
You've got to find something else because if the business closes, what are you going to do? So she was always pushing us to go to school. She was always pushing us to get a college education. And she was right, because we closed the store in 2005. And I had left the store already 7 or 8 years prior to that, and became a teacher at dual school. And I taught for 10 years there. During that stint, I coached football with El Gutierrez for 4 years at the freshman and JV levels. And, teaching to me was a passion. And I felt that I could share my knowledge and give something back and push these kids to be better than what they think they are. A true leader, would allow others to be greater than him or herself. And so that's why we in education always look to, push our students to do the best. And then after I taught, I got a master's in educational leadership. They gave me a shot at Calexico High School to be vice principal in 1997. I took it. I love that job. And then they offered me the athletic directorship, because it usually went to a teacher, but they gave it to me as an administrator. Yeah. And, I loved it as well. I mean, we had long days, and trying to improve the program. And then finally a position opened up at the alternative schools, the adult school in the Aurora, and I applied for that. And that's where I'm at now. And but when you talk about the love for Calexico, I grew up at a time when it was, being a Bulldog was what I wanted to be. When I was a kid growing up, I'd go to the football games or the basketball games, and that was the place to be. We didn't have the technology we have today. We didn't have the distractions, if you will. The town was a lot smaller. There was nothing to do. So the only places to go were to the football games or basketball games or the sporting events.
Yeah.
So, you had these mentors, these coaches that would, inspire you to be better than you are. And so you take that as an adult and as an educator, and you try to push the new generation. So it was all a good thing. And like you said, my family came here in the early 20s, and all my uncles and aunts graduated Calexico High School from 39, 41, 48, and so on and so forth. And they stayed here. Most of them stayed here because you could run a business, you could be successful, and put your kids to college. And that's what it was all about. Yeah.
Going back to what you said about the distractions today. I grew up in here in Calexico. Well, I came here when I was 8 years old. But I basically grew up here in Pichoneras.
Right.
And, for us, it was, we did have like the Nintendos and all that stuff. But for us, going outside and, bike riding or playing basketball was our thing, because we had, the basketball court right in the middle of the apartments. Do you think that technology is, affecting the way our kids are growing up? Is it I had this other panel with my friend Gil. Shout out to Gil. He has a I don't know if you know that his show is on TV now.
Gil Rebollar.
Yeah.
Or he says Rebollar.
Rebollar, yeah. His show is on the CW on Saturday mornings at 12.
Okay.
Shout out to him.
Good. I'm glad he's on TV. Yeah.
So we had a panel about technology and how it's distracting our kids and how it's like bullying is becoming more of a non-stop thing because it's always in your hand. Back in the days, you would have to go to the park to get the chisme. Right. So do you feel like technology is?
Well, I think technology, in a certain sense, is a curse because kids can abuse the technology. They can stay at home behind a screen. I have a son who's 17 years old, and he's constantly on the Xbox. And I can hear him shouting in his room. Yeah. But he does go out and play, and he's involved in sports. But there's kids that don't do that can't interact the way we did when we were growing up. And so in that way, it is a curse. But we have all the information we want at our fingertips on a little device in front of us. We don't have to talk to anybody. We can send messages. We can post pictures. We can, say good things or bad things about, individuals. And I think in a way, there are ways that it does help our students as far as a teaching tool. But I've seen it at when I was at the high school. It was the flip phones back then, and then later on it became the smartphones. And it was people were always on them, and we couldn't stop it. And we had a policy that you couldn't use the phone. And it got to a point where I was getting all these behavior referrals and complaints about students using their phones. So I says, I have to take a step back and look at this. I says, okay, well, let them use it at the break. In the classroom, put it away. And that's, I think, is key because a lot of times when instruction is going on and students are on the phone, they're missing out. They may be on some social media. They may be, sending messages to their girlfriends or what have you, but they're not paying attention. And I see that as a curse unless the phone is used as a tool. Some teachers have apps that they download so they can check for understanding when the students, they have questions that fly on the screen, and they can check for understanding with the cell phone, with the clicker, what have you. But in a sense, it has expanded the cyberbullying part of it. We at Calexico High School, in the Unified School District in Aurora, have cyberbullying policies. In fact, just Thursday, we had a school-wide assembly talking about these things. The students themselves take lessons on this, specialized lessons on cyberbullying. And it really has changed a lot. If you were going to get bullied back in the day, they'd come up to you and they'd bullet you in your face. Yeah. Nowadays, they can hide behind a screen and bully you. And sometimes for everybody to know, and people get embarrassed, and the ridicule that comes with it, these kids are fragile, they get depressed, and they don't want to come to school, and it's just a cycle. So technology could be seen as a curse, and it's like fate. It could put you in a hole or it can help you get out of a hole, depending on how you use it and how it uses you. Yeah,
because I remember, to me, going even like going to the library. Like you would during the summer, I would go to the library to Moreno and see people there, see people that I didn't know, like from Willie or from other schools, and get to meet people there, or even I don't know if we still have those where like the 6 de Septiembre or 4th of July, we had those things at the park, those events at the park. Yeah, even that, like meeting new people. I mean, for me, it was especially meeting new girls. Right. I mean, that was the fun thing about living in a small city where your parents felt safe in the sense that you're gonna go to the park, and I would walk everywhere. Nowadays kids are like, oh, come pick me up or take me. Like for me, I got everywhere walking or on a bike or.
Yeah, and in those days, I didn't want to be seen with my parents as a high schooler. I said I'd rather walk, and we walked everywhere, like you said. But today, all the kids get a ride to school. They can live a couple of blocks away, and they they don't walk. There are some that do, but the majority get it right, and that what puts an impact on our streets during the rush hour of school in the morning. I'm sure you've seen it. You work at the high school, and it's just they become dependent on a lot of things. Instant gratification is one of the things that this technology brings. You want an answer now. You don't want to have to wait. Back in the day when we did research, we'd go to the library, go to the card catalog, and have to really look for it. Nowadays, you hit Google, and there it is.
Yeah.
You have answers at your fingertips.
Yeah.
So in a way, that's good, but in a way, it's not so good because you're working smarter, yes, but you don't appreciate what others did before you. In a sense, a lot of kids I see today, we talk about the year 2000 or 1995. Oh, nothing happened until they were born.
Yeah.
That's what I see.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah, to me, it's weird that, I graduated high school in 2000. Mm-hmm. And I see these kids that, I was born in 2002 or I'm like, oh man, makes me kind of feel old. But going back to, when you as a kid or teenager here in Calexico, was something that you think has changed, the city back then to now? Like,
well, the population has almost at least tripled. We were a city of 12,000. We're over 38,000 now, pretty close to 40. The impact of the growth has affected us. But we were in those days. It was a more of a family type atmosphere. My parents knew a lot of the parents. A lot of those other parents were Calexico grads, and we were like second generation. So there was a sense of loyalty to the schools, to the city. Calexico mostly now is a transient population. We have a lot. There's a lot of newcomers that don't have that spirit of the city or the schools, and in those days it was everybody knew everybody.
Yeah.
If I got out of line, and an adult saw me, okay, Moreno, I'm going to tell your parents on. And they wouldn't hesitate. And nowadays you don't do that. Parents can take offense to that.
I think that now, since the population started to settle a little bit. And I think, at least I feel with my kids, I feel that the parents are a little bit more together. We do that where you say hey, I'm gonna tell your mom you're screwing around.
Yeah.
We as a lot of my class, are coming back to Calexico, their teachers or their works, in public places that we could do that. We're like, hey, I saw your son, he was with this girl or whatever. I think it's getting a little bit back to that atmosphere where we can trust our kids with other parents, the parent community. Well, my wife knows you because Sunny hangs out with my son. And that little group of kids that's been growing up since Kiki have been going along through high school. I think that little parent group is a little bit closer now than before. But yeah, I imagine that when you had a smaller population, it was easier for you to know each other. And that's
and a lot of things that have changed are the family dynamics. There's a lot of single parents out there, and back when I was growing up, that everybody had their mother and father, or they were part of a family with two parents. And so nowadays you see a lot of mothers raising their children, and some of the fathers are absent, or vice versa. And I see that more and more, which kind of strikes me as these kids sometimes don't have that positive, either male or female role model in their life, and usually grandparents take the crux of raising their grandkids because their parents are gone. And so a grandparent nowadays would have a tough time raising a child with perhaps ADHD. That in those days you didn't have Ritalin, you had a chancla or a belt.
Yeah.
And
the cure for all.
Right, the cure for all. But you see that dynamic change. And who's to say whether it's good or bad? It all depends on the kid. We've seen many success stories with single parents, and I know a young man that grew up without fathers that want to be there as a father and try to break that cycle.
Yeah.
So, that dynamic has changed with the family structure. Calexico has closed a lot of businesses, and we see that we have not really bounced back from the earthquake in 2010 because there are some empty lots downtown, and downtown was the hub of the city, and Imperial Avenue. And there was no strip malls, there was no Walmarts, there was no, there was no Grand Plaza. In those days, it was downtown. You wanted to go shopping, and you had shops that specialized in certain services or products, not the 99-cent stores or the tianguis, where they have the everything under the sun.
Yeah.
So we had music stores, you had restaurants, you had dress stores, and stuff like that. And so and the business owners all lived here. They all lived here. The majority of them did, and their kids went to school here. And those business owners gave jobs to the high school kids downtown. And so a lot of the high school kids, once they turned 16 or 17, they had a job downtown, and the business owner would provide that. Now you have a lot of the older adults from Mexicali that work downtown, and that has changed.
Yeah.
And the only mainstay downtown that we have right now, we lost JCPenney, is probably Sam Alice, Garland's, and the hot dog stand. The hot dog stand I grew up with, the Oasis hot, and I know the owner and the owner's son are good friends of mine, the Ortegas. But that hot dog stand is an icon, and everybody speaks highly of it.
Yeah.
The earthquake, there was two of them. In fact, there was one on the corner of 2nd and Heffernan.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Liverpool, they call it the Liverpool store, that's on the corner right there, and then across they have the store that sells the Boost phone store. So there was that one had a corner. It was a corner, and you could order on both sides, and they'd sell hamburgers there and root beer floats and chocolate shakes, and you would eat standing up. Then they had the one that's currently there, which is in the middle of the street, and that's the only one left. But like I said, Calexico is famous for a lot of things. People like to bash Calexico, only in Calexico, and I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
And people complain about, the city, the council, the school district. Our schools aren't good enough. But when you take a look at it, how do you measure how good a school is? Do you measure it by test scores? Do you measure it by Friday night scores? I mean, or do you measure it by what the graduates become? If you're a graduate of the school and you go on to college and you go on to be a successful individual, shouldn't that be a way of measuring how we do?
Yeah.
But like I said, Calexico has changed since 1978 when I was in high school to a town that's become complex, to a town that has seen a turnover in city administration. And when there's a turnover, there's no stability. You have breaking parts, and so I've seen that, and people have become disillusioned with the government, and so being an election year, people are still getting involved. We still have a lot of people running for council, trying to make a change, and I think that's good. I think it's good, but sometimes once you're elected, egos get in the way.
Yeah.
And things start to fall apart, but when you hire someone to do a job, let them try to do the job. If they're not doing it, 2 or 3 years, then you look for something else. But I mean, it's really hard to change that whole mentality, the perception of our community, and it has changed tremendously. And you speak to individuals from El Centro Brawley, well, I remember Calexico used to be this way, or used to be, we used to love to go to Calexico because they had these nice stores downtown, or we would walk across to Mexicali. Instead of going through the tunnel, we'd cross the street, and that's how it was in those days. When I was a kid, I was 11 years old. My parents would give me $1 for a haircut. I'd cross into Mexicali, get a haircut, and cross back. I didn't have to go through no tunnels. It was where that bus terminal is. You know where that bus terminal is? Right there in front of Sam Alice. That used to be the old entry.
Oh. Okay.
And I could go
right
down on the sidewalk, cross the street, and I was in Mexicali. And that's unique in Calexico because you look along the Mexico and American border all the way from San Diego to Brownsville, Texas, and there's a geographical barrier. And you don't have two downtowns together.
Yeah.
Calexico is a downtown with Mexicali's downtown, and that is something that's unusual because you have to cross a bridge or cross a river to go to Mexico, but in other cities, but not in Calexico. And that's what made it appealing. People would come to Calexico to go to Mexicali, and it was a whole different lifestyle over there, and that has changed now with the population growing and the construction of the port of entry. That this port of entry that we have right now was built in '74, over 44 years ago. So the new one that we're getting, will make it, it makes it into a larger city type of feeling.
Yeah.
It doesn't give us that small town feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's kind of sucks because I think that's one of the things that for me it's appealing about Calexico. That small town kind of feeling that even though we're a little bit bigger now, you still have that feeling where a lot of people. Not necessarily that you can leave your door open, like unlocked, but I mean you still have that sense of safety, feeling like cozy. But yeah, I mean things are changing, and I don't think it's taking away a lot from what Calexico used to be. I don't know what you.
Yeah, and it's just it comes with growth and development. It comes with population expansion. Even right here in this industrial park, this was part of what was called the Calexico Community Action Council, which was a nonprofit organization that started back in the late '60s, and they developed this area called the Kennedy Gardens, which was residential and industrial. And they had it set aside for a school, the Kennedy Gardens Elementary. Mm-hmm. But this is what the whole concept behind this neighborhood was, to build houses, affordable housing for migrant farm workers to establish roots. And many people came in, they bought houses, they lived here, they settled. They may have still followed the crops, in the summer to Salinas, in the winter, down to the valley.
Yeah.
But they felt those early leaders back in the late '60s felt that this could be something that the community would embrace. And at that time, you had a lot of white folks that lived in Calexico, and they started leaving. They started seeing a trend. And I don't know if they would call it the Great White Flight or what have you, but I went to school with quite a number of white friends. Their families still live here. Mm. Not many as such, but a lot of them had left Calexico for whatever reason. But parents are still here, and the unique thing about that was a lot of those white families spoke Spanish and English, so they were bilingual, and they could speak it almost as good as a native speaker.
Yeah.
So you had that atmosphere, that family atmosphere, even though they may have been white or Asian or black, because we had some black families too, they wouldn't hesitate speaking Spanish or speaking a form of, Spanglish, as we say, So we had that. In other cities, you don't have that because of our proximity to Mexicali. You had the white families communicating in Spanish.
Yeah.
Maybe not so their parents, but their kids. Mm-hmm. And we'd hang out. And it was the microcosm of the United States was in Calexico, because you had people from different cultures appreciating each other.
Yeah, it's crazy. This summer I went to the Hoover Dam, and they have a little museum and how important the Hoover Dam, and they talk a lot about the Imperial Valley, how it was the Hoover Dam is important to the valley, because otherwise this would have been flooded with with water. So. And talks about all these farm workers that, especially like you said, a lot of white people came here in the early days and settled, and then I guess they moved out. So you said you grew up. High school was a lot of mixed cultures, but the appreciation of each other's families and cultures and their upbringing, and. I remember being class vice president, and the president was Mark Remington, who was a white family that had farms, and he had cattle feedlots just outside of town. You had farmers that lived in Calexico that grew, a lot of the hay or the carrots or what have you, and everybody
seemed to get along. I don't recall any type of racial discrimination growing up in Calexico, although when I left Calexico in 1978 to go to San Diego State University, I saw that firsthand, and it was like a culture shock to me.
Yeah.
You know, and I never had experienced that type of, I wouldn't say animosity, but you know, that separation that I didn't experience in Calexico. But you know, everybody got along. You know, you of course you had personality differences like anything else, but for the most part, you know, if you were part of a team or an athletic team or a club or what have you, people got along with each other, and we all spoke English, but we all spoke Spanish too, which was interesting. Yeah.
Going back to the super shopping, because I remember, you know, going there a lot with my parents.
Thank you.
You know, you could do a lot of things there. You know, buy your groceries, pay your bills, chat with people.
Right.
What was something that you remember from, you know, those days at working at? You know,
I started working there when I was still in high school. My dad opened it up in June '77. He ventured with two of his friends to pool their money and open this, what used to be this old supermarket that was A&P. It was called Shopping Bag, and then Fazio's. And then in 1977, my dad was without a job because they closed the store. He had never received unemployment until February of '77 to possibly June of '77, and he, you know, he got a good deal with the building. They wanted to get rid of it. It was either he stay here and try to get that store, or they offered him a job in Los Angeles to work at an Alpha Beta as a store manager there. And he had a discussion, I remember, with my mother, and they would talk about, well, what should we do? I mean, should we leave Calexico, move to Los Angeles, and so I can get this job as a store manager for Alpha Beta? And you know, they said, you know, the family's here. You know, I was going to be a senior. My sister had just graduated. My young brother and sister were still in elementary and junior high. So that was a topic of discussion for a while. But then they decided, no, well, we're gonna open the store. We're gonna pool our money, Chato Lopez and George Montaño, my dad's friends, and we're going to invest in this. And so they invested in the store. We all got jobs there. I worked in the produce department. My sisters worked in the booth and the check stand. My brother worked in the meat department, and then my other brother Joe worked in you know, counting the cash. And you know, we all had our role. And anytime anybody would go in there, my dad would know them. They went to the store because of him, and so we got to know them because of him. And so he would cash checks. He would cash unemployment checks, Social Security checks, disability checks, payroll checks, as long as the people bought their groceries. And so they would come in and they would do that, and they would pay their bills and buy the award-winning carne para asar, and we got to know a lot of people. A lot of people came back to us. Sometimes my dad would let people sign the ticket because, oh, I forgot my wallet or I forgot my checkbook. Oh, don't worry, Mrs. Sanchez, go ahead and sign it, and when you get back, you know, when you come back, you can pay us. And so what that did is that provided them an opportunity to come back. And he said to me, he always used to say, you know, we spent so much money trying to get people to walk through that door, yet one remark or one gesture negatively can affect you, and they will never come back.
Yeah.
And you would lose out on that revenue and the sales that you so dearly depend on. So we learned a lot. We learned about, you know, quality products, customer service, and you know, being available. I mean, we used to, the store originally closed at 9, but people were coming, you know, oh, I forgot my milk, I forgot the bread, I forgot, you know, the bananas. Can I come in over closing? Well, come on in and get it. So sometimes I wouldn't get out until 9:30, and then, okay, we're gonna close at 10. And 10 o'clock come around, oh, I forgot this, or I forgot that. And so, oh, we'll close at 11. So, I mean, he tried to be available. He'd open up at 7 in the morning, close at 11. A lot of stores now are 24 hours. But that, you know, that's also, you know, to man the store that time is, you know, costs money, the salaries.
Yeah.
But we learned a lot. I got to know a lot of people. And they still remember. You know, I'm working at the school now for 30 years, but they still remember, you know. I remember, you know, sometimes I can't place them. I know I've seen them before, but yeah, I remember when you worked at the store. I remember when you were, you know, doing that. And that taught us, you know, again, like I said, customer service. Working in the private sector teaches you to become a better public employee. And I always felt that, if you want to be a good public employee, you have to understand how the private sector works.
Yeah. Because I remember, I remember your dad, and I remember Joe was always in the little booth.
Yeah, the cage.
Yeah, that's like a memory of me when I went to Super Shopping. Any crazy stories that you?
Yeah, I used to have. I worked in the produce department, and we used to unload trucks. We'd have about 6-7 pallets of produce. They'd come in about 7 a.m, and what would happen at that time is these winos would come out and hang out in the back of the store. I guess they were, and they were funny characters, and I remember, buying them caguamas or bottles of Thunderbird and, just shooting the breeze with them, and they were in the back of the store during hot and cold times. But I remember one time, one of my dad's workers was a June morning, and on Sundays my dad would go to the pool hall, and they would drink beer and shoot 9-ball, and one of the workers showed up hungover. There was a pallet of eggs that they dropped off because the eggs would come with the produce department, so they'd have a couple of pallets of eggs, and so this guy, his name was Caesar. He came in, and my dad told me, you need to break down the pallet and bring these eggs and put them in the meat department. We got to chill them. We don't want to keep them out here. So he wanted to do it the lazy way. So instead of taking the cages off one at a time, he decided to pull a stack down. And I'm sure you've seen these videos, viral videos on
YouTube.
On YouTube where the guy's bringing a stack of beer and then pushes it over. Well, that's what happened to the eggs. He was bringing a stack down off a pallet. It came down too much and it was falling, so he pushed it back, and a whole bunch of stacks went down. And you had all these broken eggs in the middle of summer, just cooking in the heat on the hot asphalt. And Jesus Christ, but my dad, was pissed off, because that's money right there. You lose money on the eggs. So he had him clean them up and put them back, and wrote it off as a loss. He took part of the cost of the eggs out of his check. But, didn't leave him without any money, but just a little bit every week when he would get paid. But yeah, and then it was just, we had characters that would walk in all the time, and I look back on it and I says, I can't believe I did these things. I can't believe it. But my Uncle Manny, who was always hanging out. He hung out at the dog food and smoked the cigarettes. He would walk in the store. He'd eat a banana. He wouldn't pay for anything. He'd eat a banana, and then before he eat the banana, he'd grab a pack of Pall Mall, put it in his pocket, and then eat a banana, go down and go to the sundries and get some Aqua Velva and put it on his face, and then get a little pint of milk, drink it, and throw everything away in the trash. And then he'd sit on the dog food, and he'd start smoking his cigarettes. And my dad would look, Manny, did you pay for those cigarettes? Damn it! And he would look up, but he was a character, and so we had all these characters coming in and out, and we'd talk to them. They'd tell us stories. And I would laugh, and it was like a good time. It was like a bar where people would share their stories, but there was no drinking. It was just sharing stories and having fun, and we had not only derelicts and mental defectives and people with disabilities that became our friends, and they would come to us, and we would, they didn't have an ID to cash a check, but we knew who they were, and so we would help them out.
I think that's one of the things that we miss about those type of places where if you go to Walmart, like, they see millions of people a week, so like they don't know who you are. But like when you go like to a small place like that, Sol has that kind of atmosphere too, where
But try to go there without any money and see if they'll let you sign the check.
Or an ID.
Or an ID.
You miss that. We miss that.
And one of the things he did was also give back to the community. He would always sponsor the 2030 activities, or the Lions activities, or the Chamber of Commerce activities. Always buying an ad in the yearbook. Always when I started on Bulldog Radio, they were sponsors, and every every Friday night they would announce, the sponsors, and he was one of them. So he would always like to give back in the community, not really get involved in politics, but sponsor, this youth sport. We sponsored so many little league teams in those days, and it was just that was the type of business owners that we used to have in Calexico that would sponsor youth sports. A lot of that is gone. People just don't have that same caring for the community and the youth that we did and that others did in those times. Now it's kind of there's I don't know how to call it, but there's no connection there anymore with the businesses and the community.
Yeah.
As far as service organizations and youth sports.
Yeah.
So I mean, he really liked doing that. It was hard for him to say no. And he just wanted. He felt that this was something. You're privileged to have a business, and you're making money. Give some back to the community. And a lot of businesses don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's sad because even because we don't give back to the community, a lot of sports teams aren't we're getting less and less kids participating in whether it's Pop Warner, whether it's Little League, and I think that's also killing that community vibe where we all get together and
you're right, but I look out, I cruise the parks in the evening. My son goes to practice, but I cruise the parks and I see we have American Youth Football, which is something similar to Pop Warner. I think Pop Warner has become a very expensive venture for a lot of the families. I know that when my son was playing, it was $250, and if you have 2 or 3 kids and a cheerleader, it could be that's rent money or that's money for groceries, and so you have to decide what you want to do. But what I've seen a lot of involvement is in the CPAL soccer.
Oh, okay.
They put new lights over there between 5th and I think it's 5th and 4th. And Daniel Gutierrez Park, and you see hundreds of kids participating. Why? The question is, I wonder why. Maybe because it's not that expensive, and the equipment is minimal, and we become a soccer town, and there's nothing wrong with that, but we'd like to see more American football, more, we used to have a CYBL, Calexico Youth Basketball.
I played there.
You played there,
Yeah.
and it was run by Raza Danny Santillan, and he...
And Santiago Sada.
Yeah, and
Guillermo Sada.
Yes, Sada, Bill Sada, yeah. Mm. And those guys, really did a lot for the youth in that respect. You had a swim team, which we have now, but we didn't have it for a while. And so there was all these recreational programs that we had when we were smaller, and we have grown to really move toward the soccer player, which is good, but we want to get more people involved in other sports, basketball, baseball, football, swimming, track and field. Now we have a new track at Calexico High School. We have our facilities are top notch, if you will, and we need to get more of the kids involved. And how do we do that? We do that through intramural in the elementaries. I feel very strongly about that if we want our kids to get involved, we need to work out this after-school program that gets these kids involved in flag football, in basketball, in softball. And we do have a very strong softball team. And so a lot of these kids don't go out for whatever reason. Mm. And so what we need to do as school administrators and teachers is reach out to them. Reach out to the young ones, the 5th, 6th, 7th graders. Let them know that we have programs. Let them know that they can participate. Yeah. Let them know that they're included. Don't be left out. Mm-hmm. Become part of this.
Yeah, when I was I used to go here to Kennedy Gardens. We had tournaments, basketball tournaments, soccer tournaments. Yeah, uh-huh. And I played in the CYBL as well. I think there was more opportunity to get involved in a sport. Because when you played it in the elementaries, it wasn't, you didn't have to pay. It was, you know, part of the,
Yeah, it was free.
So I mean,
All you had to do is show up.
yeah. And well, for us, when I used to live Pichoneras, they used to pay. Like I played Pop Warner one year, and the Pichoneras, the Housing Authority would pay for my subscription or stuff like that. So
physical and everything.
So I mean, I don't know if it's because you know, kids are not interested, or is it because there's no opportunity to, you know.
I think people have become, there's a sense of apathy. Like they don't. It doesn't matter. I don't know if they don't care or they don't want to be part of it. I really can't put my finger on it, but the schools need to take a big role in this because they're the ones that provide the fields, and they're the ones that provide the resource, the kids. You know, and growing up, I remember Calexico, back in those days, Dual, Jefferson, and Rockwood would be in a league against Maine's, Kennedy Gardens, and well, Blanche Charles when it opened. But when I was teaching, we had intramural sports, and the schools had a certain pride, spirit, where, okay, Dual's going to play Jefferson or Dual's going to play Rockwood. And so these people would come in, and they had that sense of pride in the schools.
Even in junior high, I remember, you know, the bone game.
Yes.
I mean, that was like a big thing, you know.
In fact, that was a very big thing because you had 2 freshman squads that had 30 kids participating on each, more or less. And then they hit the bone game, which was traditionally the last game of the season. And, you know, who had the bragging rights.
Yeah.
But the following year, the numbers would dwindle. And they had felt that they hit the peak of their football career at that bone game and didn't continue playing.
It happened to me.
Did it?
Yeah. I played, was 96 or 97. We were supposed to lose because the Willie team had a really good team, and then we had I don't know if you remember Frank Duffy.
Yes, he was my student.
He was
6th grade, Francisco Duffy.
Yeah, he was our quarterback, and he got suspended. So I was the backup. I was the backup, and you know, we were supposed to lose, and we ended up winning. I think it was like 8-6 the final score. So yeah, and after that, I was like, you know.
And I remember talking to Richard Gonzalez about, you know, here we got 60 to 70 freshmen, 2 teams, like having an A and a B, but not really an A and B, but it's 2 A teams, you know. They didn't come out their sophomore year. That was, to me, that was an enigma. Why didn't they come out? And we would talk to them after the game. I remember when I was athletic director, we'd call them together after the game and say, you guys need to stay together now. You know, the bone game is over. Now to, you know, be a JV or varsity.
Yeah.
But you know,
I remember at the end of our game, somebody from the high school came. We were in the middle of the field, both teams, and somebody came up and told us kind of a similar thing. Where like, you know, next year is you guys are all part of one team. You know, make sure to come out. Blah blah blah.
But a lot of guys didn't come out. I mean, I don't know if like I said, I felt that they hit the peak of their high school football at that bone game when they still had 3 years to go.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I kind of regret not playing. Just that pride of wearing a jersey on Thursdays or Fridays, you know. And I think a lot of kids are missing out on that because, you know, I don't know, you feel special wearing that garnet or the white. And a lot of kids, I was talking to Coach Tyree a couple of weeks ago and asked him, do you think it's because people are afraid of injuries, concussions and all that? And he's like, I don't think... He told me that he doesn't think kids at this level with the protection they have are prone to, you know, those types of injuries. Obviously, it is gonna happen. It might happen. It's, you know, it's football. It's physical, right. You know, but the probability of it happening is because he told me, like, put one of our helmets and it's heavy. It feels really snug. You have a lot of protection compared to what I wore back in junior high. The kids nowadays are really protected. He's like, right. But the thing is that, you know, if you compare the impact of players hitting themselves in the high school level versus at college versus NFL, you know, it's way different. The speed, the mass is you know.
Well, they've come up with a rule just recently, a couple of years ago, about the defenseless man, meaning that, you know, if someone is going for a pass or is defenseless, you know, in the old days nail
Knock their
them.
head,
But
yeah.
you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing because, injuries can affect your adult life, when you get hurt like that. But yeah, the equipment now is a lot safer. We just got to get people out there. And it starts, like I said, it starts with an outreach. It starts talking to them at a young age. We have to have our own players sell our program, and talk to these kids, I remember when I was coaching high school football back in '93 when the Bulldogs won a championship. I recall some of those players after the season had ended going to the elementary schools, 5th and 6th graders, and talking to them about, continuing the tradition. And this was like about 4 or 5 players would go to, and of course a coach would take them.
Mm-hmm.
But these young men, after winning a championship, having won a championship from '74, which was the last time, then '93, we came close in 2002. But it's just we have to have a certain outreach because people don't feel connected, and I think that's a key for our football program and a lot of the athletics. I mean, football to me is a major sport because it brings in revenue. It pays for other sports through the gate. And, you look at that stadium that we built at Warfield. I mean, the venue is something to be proud of.
Yeah.
It's our secular cathedral, if you will, that everybody goes to worship, on Friday night.
Yeah. And now, hopefully, with our new parking lot, it's going to look even more appealing.
And once we get that all taken care of. But I think we need to go back to looking at how we can, get kids involved.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a PE teacher, coach back in the day, signed my yearbook. Kenny James, he became a superintendent of public instruction for the state of Arkansas. And remember, he wrote in my yearbook, "Don't be afraid to get involved, John." And I remember that, and that's always stuck with me. Get involved with your communities. Do what you can to make it better.
Yeah.
And that came from a family of serving the public. I had my uncle Raleigh, Victor's dad, was the first Mexican-American city councilman in Calexico in 1950, I think in 1950 or 52. And he was on there with white Anglo gentlemen that ran the city. And he was the first Mexican-American. And after that, he kind of opened the door for others to get involved. And his son Victor became council member, mayor, supervisor. I ran. And it was just a family thing of getting involved and serving the community in many different ways. Like you were saying, even the announcing on the radio on Friday night, bringing something to the community. I don't make money off of that. It's just something that I like doing, and it's something that I like sharing. The Chamber of Commerce calls me up all the time to head up events. Call the Christmas parade, or we have a dinner raffle, or I'm there.
Yeah.
And remember when my son was playing Little League, they would call me, announce the game at the Little League, and put on the music. And it's just what you can do to get involved and make Calexico a better place.
Yeah. Going back to what you said about players selling the program, I remember when I was a kid, I used to go to the football games. I remember knowing some kind of knew some of them because of the CYBL, but like Butch Morales. He was a quarterback, right?
Class
Tony,
of '94. Tony, yes.
And then David Tittle. There's a couple guys there that
Eddie Leal, those guys, yeah, they were the 93, 94 champs.
Yeah. So I remember going to the games and seeing them in the street and being like, oh, there's Tony. Maybe reaching out to the younger kids, making them come to the game, see the atmosphere. Because it's, I don't know, it's once you're there, you I don't know, it gets you excited.
Right, and so we also would do Jose is get these Pop Warners to play at halftime. Get these little guys to come out.
Yeah, I remember
come out with the team.
Yeah, I remember that.
Remember that? And if it was a special night, all children under 12 going free.
Yeah. I remember going after practice, going to the games with my gear or whatever, and they wouldn't charge us.
There's just so many things that you can think of to get people involved. To get this is our town. We want to make it better. We need to get involved and opening the doors instead of being a gatekeeper. Open those doors, let them in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what I've learned in the last couple of years is that we need to criticize less and and do something instead of
solve
just
problems.
Yeah.
We know what they are.
Mhm.
No, we have to solve those problems. Criticize less. My dad used to tell. He always had sayings. Fool can always criticize, and he usually does. And they usually do. And so but try to fix something. Try to leave it better than you found it. And that is a belief of mine that whenever I start something, that's my goal, is to leave it better than I found it. When you come into something new, it's a shock, if you will. It's something you're not used to. But when you leave it, my sister is a good example. My sister Rose, she came into this cheerleading program 20 years ago, and she's got so much participation. I mean, she's got 200 some odd girls that try out, and she can only select so many.
Yeah.
But everybody wants to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And I asked her, Rose, how do you do this? As well, we have our cheerleaders that finish the year, they're seniors, they sell the program. It comes from them. It's more authentic when it comes from someone who's just participated. Mm-hmm. And that's what we need to do in a lot of our sports program is to sell it with the students selling it. We look at our girls softball is outstanding, our volleyball is outstanding. A lot of our sports are good, but the one that brings in the revenue of the football, needs help.
Yeah.
And how do we help it? Well, we have to go out there. We're going to have some lean years. We've had some lean years in the past, but never say die. Never say we're going to give up. We're going to keep fighting for this.
And like you said earlier, when there's a lot of turnaround and athletic directors, coaches, there's also that disconnect.
Right.
And I like what Coach Terry is doing. He's trying to get involved with the community. I remember when, I think it was last year or during the summer, he invited parents over to his house to mingle with the kids and himself. So and plus he likes being here. He likes the town. He likes the valley. I think that hopefully he can stick around and make a good foundation to this program, because I remember him reaching out to the Pop Warner teams, to that when we had a freshman team. I think this year we didn't get enough kids.
We have a freshman class of 800. Half of them are boys. We can't get 35 boys out of the 400 to come out for ball. And I don't know why that is. Calexico has the biggest population of any high school in the valley. We need more participation. We need those kids to come out. We need leaders to open the doors and outreach. Not find ways to put barriers in front, but find ways to get them involved, to get these kids involved. And I think there's a disconnect there.
Yeah. We need to, I think what we need to do is sell it to everybody, not only the kid that, we know is athletic, sell it to the kid that maybe has never played football.
Yeah. And that many don't go out till the freshman year because maybe they're overweight in their Pop Warner days. Yeah. And so they can't play with, they may be 9 or 10, but they can't play with 12 and 13-year-olds, with the same weight. So, it'll take time. We're looking at a program that was in the dumps, for whatever reason. But that's in the past. We need to build on what we've got, and we need to move forward, and we need to get kids involved.
Mm-hmm. And I feel that the kids that are involved, the last couple of years since Tyree got there, I told them last week, is that whenever they're wearing their jerseys, or I see a lot of more kids that are building mass. They're walking with some swag. They're being more prideful of being part of the team, right. Of the school. A lot of our kids are. I've noticed that they have more pride recently. There's a time where the pride wasn't all there, but I think now it's like. You see more involvement, with the ASB kids and the football team, and they're
well, those ASB kids, those cheerleaders, the athletes are the ambassadors of the school. They're the ones that we put a face to when we talk about Calexico and we talk about the high school, and it's these kids with the spirit, especially the cheerleaders. They're out there in the heat, doing their stunts, and you go to the games and there's still that a sea of garnet on the home side, the Bulldog faithful, that are out there year in and year out. But there's a lot of old timers that don't go to the games. But I remember when I started going 25 years ago or more, there were these gentlemen who were 50s graduates, and they were there every Friday night, supporting the team, and those are not going anymore because whatever reason, maybe a little older in age, but we need to have our young generation. We need more service organizations. We need a lot of service organizations have really dwindled in numbers, and I think that's affecting us. Back in the day, in the city of 12,000, we had the Rotary, the Kiwanis, the 2030, the Elks, the Lions. You had about 6 or 7 organizations that were service organizations where men and women, so you had the Soroptimist, men and women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s were involved. Now I think we have the Rotary, and I think that's it. There's the Lions Noontimers, but our community has grown, tripled the size, but there is no involvement with individuals, adults getting involved in these service organizations. That I think is also okay. Go to El Centro and Brawley, and they have a lot of these active organizations within their communities. Like I said, do they care? I don't know. Do they have time? Everybody can make time. I mean, I was involved in the Elks when they were still here, and I know. In fact, there was a post on Joe Vindiola, who was a postman here in the Kennedy Gardens that they posted on, and he was an Elk, he was a Lion, he was a UFW, he was a 2030, and he was in all these organizations because that's just how it was in those days. And people want to bring these things back, and I think it's a great idea.
But the thing is that for me, you talk about these clubs, and I really have no clue what they are or they do. Maybe it's the fact that it's not being sold to
Well, they usually raise money for scholarships and give it to the students, or they provide equipment or field trips or whatever it was that they did to support. Or they would sponsor Little League teams. Mm-hmm. And they were all part of the community, and the dads knew each other, and they were all, they were a big part of the success in those days of the city of Calexico. People get involved in your community. Mm-hmm. That was the whole theme of what I saw growing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe I have to interview one of these leaders so that they can promote it. Because, like I said, I've seen them. I remember seeing them on jerseys. Rotary Club,
right?
Or 2030 or whatever.
American Legion,
Yeah, I remember seeing those, but I really had no idea. Like even right now, I who are they? What are they doing? How do they get these funds to sponsor these teams?
Membership dues, and fundraisers, mm-hmm. selling tickets and things like that. Sapo Cuellar is Sapo. He sells the tickets. He used to be a custodian at the school. A good guy to interview is Joe Vindiola. I mean, he was the first ASB president for Calexico High School in 1955. When we moved from the old site where San Diego State was, they closed that school in 54 and they opened up a new school in 55. And that's where he was the ASB president. He can give you a big history of a lot of the stuff that went on in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, even up to the 90s. He's still involved in his early 80s with the Desert Valley Bandits, which was a former 2030 club membership. And the 2030 club membership, you had 60, 70 guys. You have the Calexico Baja Runners that do a lot of work for Calexico in the service organization. And the 2030 motto was, a man never stands so tall until he kneels down to help a child. And that was their whole premise of what they do and why they do it. Their mission and the vision was to help the kids.
Oh, well, I mean, that's really interesting because that motto is like, wow, it's
and I kind of changed it up. I says, man never stands so tall until he kneels down to get a beer out of the ice chest, because they used to love to party. Those guys, they don't do it as much,
But yeah, I mean, like I said, maybe it's selling it, selling to people like my generation.
Your generation. There's a lot of you here.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of you live in Calexico and work in Calexico, and can become involved, and be part of some of these organizations. I know we have a Rotary Club that's going to put on a talent show. The 20th of October, I believe, is that weekend. And then we used to have a Toastmasters that's still going on. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they raise any money, but you had these active clubs, and that's why the 2030 was called the Active 2030, because they were selling fireworks, they were selling raffle tickets, they were providing all kinds of activities for the adults to help the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think that's a good way to sell it. All these clubs are there to help the kids. And something that now you mentioned, being involved with the community. Something that they do here in Calexico Brewery Company is, they allow people to come in and, do events. Yogi, with his what's his business called?
Oh yeah, the cannabis.
Yeah, he had an event last week here.
Yeah, I saw it. And Yogi's doing really good, and he's giving back to the community. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. People like him, businessmen that try to do other things that help the community.
Yeah,
and we need more of that.
Yeah, they were selling barbecue plates, barbecue ribs, and I guess they were gonna donate that money to the Boy Scouts and some other.
She took a picture of all the greenbacks there on his page.
Yeah,
I said, "Look at that. That's damn good."
Yeah. He's putting his money where his mouth is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we gotta, I guess, sell that. Get more, involved. Get that community sense back into
like I said, Joe Vindiola is just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to things like that, and organizing, and just caring about community, just loving Calexico. People talk bad about it all the time, but deep in your heart, this place tugs at your sleeve. It's your family's here, your memories are here. The house you grew up on, the streets you played with your friends on. Growing up in this community, it's a thing of beauty, I think, and it's something that carries more weight than the negative issues. The things that we can change. If you want to change them, get involved. It starts with you.
Yeah. Get
involved and make that change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the main reasons why I started this. To spread the word of the positive about Calexico. Most of the people that I've interviewed is people that are trying to change our culture, and yeah, I think that there's a lot of work to be done, but it can be done, and hopefully we see some change, and because it's, I mean, I plan on living here my whole life, the rest of my life.
Yeah, I plan on dying here, and hopefully not in the near future, but
yeah,
some years ahead.
And I hope that my kids, when they grow up, even if they move away, they like you said, it tugs them back to come here and get involved. But yeah, it's been an hour.
Wow, that was a fast hour.
Yeah. I feel that there's more that we can talk about. Mm-hmm. It's politics, Bulldog Radio.
Yeah.
But since most of my podcasts are an hour long, I think that you're going to be one of my returning guests, hopefully.
Sure, no problem. Maybe you can get me and Joe Vindiola on, or Victor Carrillo. I know Victor has a wealth of knowledge too.
Yeah. Maybe you and Vic, so they can talk about how you're telling me that you've been doing it for 10 years and 15 years.
This is my 25th year.
25th year,
on
and
Radio.
There's 10 games per season, so
10 games. That's over. This is my 244th game.
And you've never missed a game?
I missed one. When I was married, my wife said, "We're going to that concert in Vegas. We're leaving on Friday, but it's September. I have to be at the game." "No, you're going." And I couldn't say no, so I had someone take my place. But that's the only game I missed.
Oh, okay.
2007.
But yeah, that's somebody else we can bring in.
Sure.
But yeah, thank you for doing this today, and. I know it's Saturday morning, and we'd rather be sitting on the couch watching some college football.
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to go back to that. But thank you, Jose. I appreciate it. Anytime, just let me know. And we're here on the, what is it? What is this station? What is your program called?
¿Qué pasa, Calexico?
¿Qué pasa, Calexico? We'll be back with more in a minute on the ¿Qué pasa, Calexico podcast network.
And thank you, Calexico Brewery, once again for allowing us to be here today.
No beer. We didn't have any beer, but it's not 12 o'clock yet.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.